Anyone remember Games for Windows Live? It was that parasitic entanglement of PTSD-inducing software, purpose-built to drive legitimate game buyers to piracy. GFWL clung to its life as an early Scout SCV might, or StarCraft 2 at all, for that matter, and Games for Windows Live lived a relatively short life, thankfully, but each day of its existence felt like eternity spent in a quagmire haunted by the crushed souls of developers pressured into marketing deals with Microsoft, who all watched in abject horror as their games received lashings for interminable crashes and login bugs. Mercifully, it was killed, put down, and leaving developers to scramble and update a few good legacy games, Street Fighter, Batman, and Dirt 3 included, to work without the GFWL lifeline, if you could even call it that to begin with. We thought it was dead for good, but Microsoft's newest incarnation of marketing doublespeak calls for a new era of, quote, unified gaming between consoles and PCs, which means only one thing for PC gamers: restrictions. And this is a common buzzword for these companies who think they're doing great things for PC gamers by quote-unquote unifying the platforms, but that's not really what PC gamers want. It's only what people who sell things want, and that's fine. It's all based in capitalism anyway. They need money to make these games, to make their platforms, but it's got to be done in a way that is agreeable with the PC gaming culture. And that's what we've observed with Microsoft's announcements over the past few weeks. Like the Fine brothers attempting to trademark the word React and thinking that they were doing great things and changing the world, Microsoft doesn't quite seem to understand just why their self-aggrandized attempt to quote-unquote unify and better gaming scares so many PC enthusiasts. They're just oblivious, and they haven't learned a damn thing from the decaying corpse of Windows Live in the next cubicle over. Here's what's happening. Microsoft's Windows Store, featured in Windows 8 and now prominently in Windows 10, makes an attempt at recreating the mobile app buying experience, but for desktop devices. The store is now being leveraged as a direct competitor to Valve's Steam in some ways, and even promises exclusive titles like Quantum Break, which has effectively been sentenced to death by its Windows Store exclusive launch, and other titles in the near future. In the immediate future, Gears of War Ultimate Edition will also ship via Windows Store, including Windows 10 as a requirement for play, and then Tomb Raider, or Rise of the Tomb Raider, just shipped on Windows Store and Steam at the same time. And that might not be so bad. After all, EA's got its own Origin platform, and many of its titles are exclusive to Origin. CD Projekt Red, the CEO, actually owns Good Old Games, and The Witcher 3 has exclusivity on GOG Galaxy. But none of these titles do some of the short-sighted things that Microsoft does. With currently available games on the Windows Store, certain game settings are wholly inaccessible and immutable, including VSync, which is forced on, and this means that users of FreeSync and G-Sync displays must forego their cutting-edge, expensive monitor technology. Yes, even FreeSync does add a bit of overhead for validation, and they have to forego this tech in favor of Microsoft's vision for PC gaming, which is apparently VSync for reasons unknown to humankind other than perhaps utter incompetence. The store also doesn't use executable files, or .exes as we all know them, and instead opts for a special UWP framework file, and critically, this means that control panels from GPU vendors, as one point, can't tap into the game and make setting-specific tweaks. NVIDIA Control Panel and AMD Radeon settings are included in this, unable to see the UWP format as a playable game, and this means that their in-game displays don't work, as they plainly don't understand what the process is or that it is even a game to begin with. Fraps, Shadowplay, and peripheral macro software for your mouse or keyboard are part of this exclusion and cannot talk to the game in normal ways that you'd expect with an exe, maybe through Steam, standalone, or GOG, or otherwise. And this means that by forcing this UWP framework, if you're playing a game that is exclusive to the Windows Store, you've instantly cut your settings that you can tune, including VSync, for, again, whatever reason. That's one of them, even though most of us hate VSync for a great many of very valid reasons. And it also includes the restriction of not being able to use those overlays. So if you do like overlays or you like gameplay capture, you've now got to fight with the Windows Store and its UWP framework in order to try and do anything like that. And here Microsoft thinks it's unifying the console and PC experience. It feels like an episode of The Office. It's just painfully awkward as we watch an over-the-top character try to relate with normal people. One of the game development studios that has experience working with the UWP framework, Nexus, I think it's Nixxes, the folks who ported Rise of the Tomb Raider, indicated that VSync and other settings restrictions within the Windows Store version of games are limitations of the UWP framework, i.e. Microsoft's doing. Were you to buy Rise of the Tomb Raider on Steam, where it's available at the exact same price as on Windows Store, you'd own something infinitely more expandable that retains compatibility with the screen overlay software, settings tuning, and modding. Especially modding's a big point, by the way. A lot of mods will not work without their normal exe launching platform, and Microsoft is trying to blockade users into a sandbox where, in Microsoft's thinking, the users can't harm themselves. And that's not how PC gaming has ever worked. And had Microsoft learned anything from previous restrictions levied by itself and other studios, it'd know it's not how PC gaming will ever work. I think there's more to it than these restrictions, too. There's got to be a reason Microsoft's doing this. And mark my words, I think these restrictions inevitably bear with them microtransaction-heavy stores that attempt to monetize simple changes or mods that'd be free through any other normal framework or platform. That's where I think this could be going. So, as Microsoft continues to expand its quote-unquote ecosystem, that's a huge marketing word that everyone loves to use, as they expand their ecosystem that attempts to unify Xbox and Windows gamers, we can only hope that developers don't sign exclusivity deals with Microsoft's embarrassingly misguided gaming platform. Microsoft, if anyone there is listening, start by ditching your cumbersome framework, allow normal program, wrappers, structures, whatever, and grant the same level of control as would be found within any reasonable game distribution software on PC. And I'm including Steam, EA Origin, GOG Galaxy, and others in that list. Windows Store is as far from reasonable as possible. It is basically an incarnation or a reincarnation of games for Windows Live, which should have remained dead and buried. As for all of you watching, our recommendation is simple. Avoid the Windows Store whenever possible, as anyone who considers themselves a PC enthusiast will face only frustration with at the very least, the settings and control panel limitations, not to mention API and operating system requirements, DX12 and Windows 10, in cases where they might not otherwise make sense. That's all for this one. Subscribe for more. Check us out on Patreon to support us directly. And thanks for watching. As always, we do love making this kind of content. I'll see you all next time. I need to go scream into a different black hole because YouTube wasn't enough, and I know this isn't actually going to change Microsoft's opinion that they are the best thing ever to happen to gaming.